How to act the part. If you've never been to an intense sporting event, allow me to describe the general atmosphere. In a word, it's mayhem. The entire crowd is there for a purpose, to cheer on one of the teams. It is tribalism to the extreme. People have taken the effort to drag themselves out to the sporting event, pay exorbitant prices for food and drink, and sit in uncomfortable and crowded chairs. None of that matters. It's a small sacrifice for the excitement and fervor they have for one of the teams playing. People will scream at the top of their lungs and engage in a cheering frenzy anytime something positive happens for their team. This drive for victory can turn some people into hooligans, and in recent years, there have even been fans killed by other fans for being on the wrong side. And you know what? You're going to get sucked right into it as well. Perhaps not to that extent, but it's highly contagious, and you'll become a product of your environment. You'll cheer and scream, even if it's not in your nature. This is your new normal, for as long as you're in that environment. This everyday example demonstrates how often we take cues from others on how to act. We see what it takes to blend in and act the part in any context we find ourselves in. This is also how we can become more likable, by setting the tone and acting the part of a close friend. Act first, think later. Austrian psychologist Sigmund Freud is famous for many theories. First, of course, there's his theory on the Oedipus complex, which states that we are forever in subconscious sexual competition with our same-sex parent because we want to have sex with our opposite-sex parent. In other words, sons want to have sex with their mothers, and daughters want to have sex with their fathers and supplant the other parent at the head of the table. This theory doesn't typically hold much weight with modern psychologists, though there are frequent armchair observations such as dating people that are similar to your opposite-sex parent. Second, Freud proposed that the greatest source of tension and discomfort within people was the everlasting battle between the ego, id, and superego. The id is the part of the psyche that is primal and only seeks to satisfy basic human drives such as sex, food, and shelter. The id is mostly hidden from others and suppressed because it is not considered appropriate or acceptable. The superego can be said to be the opposite of the id because it seeks to conform to the rules of society and utilize a sense of right and wrong. The ego is said to regulate both drives and make them able to work together and be expressed in a healthy manner. It moderates between our desires and what is acceptable behavior-wise. This is still up for debate in modern discourse. Third, Freud was the first psychologist to put forth the idea that nearly all of our actions and thoughts are driven by subconscious desire to some degree. Sometimes subconscious desires leak out through dreams or slips of the tongue, known as Freudian slips. He was a busy man. His theory that most contributes to the science of likability is transference. According to Sigmund Freud's theory of transference, from his 1895 book, Studies on Hysteria, people tend to transfer the emotions that they feel toward one person onto someone that reminds them of that person. For instance, in a therapy setting, if the therapist reminds the patient of an absentee father, they will feel discomfort and tension towards the therapist. But it also occurs in a positive manner. If the therapist reminds the patient of a loving teacher from their past, then they will feel affection and support toward the therapist. In daily life, it can pop up as a distrust in a potential romantic partner because they remind you of an unfaithful ex-partner, or in caring about an elderly coworker because they remind you of your grandmother. It is an unconscious process that can end up defining relationships simply because of a passing resemblance or reminder of someone else. Fortunately, we can use this to our advantage. Suppose you want to become great friends with Melissa. If you have any insight into people that Melissa feels positively toward, then we can act similarly to them, and Melissa will unconsciously begin to transfer those positive feelings onto you. You know Melissa loves her friend Victoria, and Victoria does a lot of impressions. You might brush up on your impressions and use that knowledge to gain a bit of transference of Melissa's feelings towards Victoria for yourself. Therefore, act the part of a good friend and become a good friend in people's eyes. You may have to act like a specific good friend, but that's easy enough to ascertain. This transference of feelings occurs because people feel that they are interacting with a parent or close friend. You never know what kind of resemblance or similarity will resonate, but just by being mindful, you're increasing your chances of instantly becoming likable. You can act the part in many ways. You can embody specific characteristics of their close friends. You can act familiar and like you've known them for years. You can take on a role similar to that of someone they're close to, such as a coach, teacher, or even student. You can treat them in the same way their close friend does. The overall message of transference is to find a pattern of behavior that appeals to the person and emulate it. Psychological associations aside, if you know that someone likes ice cream, then you might want to present them with ice cream. Give people what they like and want. Human beings navigate the world through snapshots that we know, and we try to apply those snapshots to unfamiliar situations. We have general snapshots of people as well, good and bad. Feelings, habits, emotions, and mannerisms are included within these snapshots. This is useful for making quick decisions and deciding if we like someone or if we feel threatened by them. Human beings might be imaginative, but we're also very lazy and efficient to a fault, so we try to put all our experiences into existing templates and snapshots based on our previous experiences. If you consciously try to fit into the snapshot of a good friend and start looking and acting like one, people will better understand how to treat you and interact with you. Fit the snapshot of a good friend who lends emotional support, and you'll position yourself well. The beauty of transference is that this happens subconsciously and people aren't aware they're making this association. If you simply act like a close friend, you'll trigger the association. On a more general note, to act the part of a friend, do away with pleasantries and formalities and get into the habit of speaking to people the way you speak to your best friends. Skip the small talk questions about their job or upbringing. Joke with them and act familiar, and yes, this also has been scientifically proven as well. In 2010, Mathis Mell of the University of Arizona published a paper called, appropriately, Eavesdropping on Happiness. Well-being is related to having less small talk and more substantive conversations. As you might suspect, he found a meaningful correlation between levels of happiness and the depth of conversation. The topic itself didn't matter, only that it was not surface level by nature. The other finding of this study is that small talk had absolutely no impact on happiness, negative or positive. It's almost like we treat small talk as waving hello to a friend. It's instinctual and therefore inconsequential to likability. So show none of the hesitancy or unfamiliarity that strangers have with each other. Talk about intimate matters. Go deep. Go slightly private. Don't be afraid to touch them and create inside jokes immediately. That's how friends act, and it's not until you articulate the difference that you realize you're preventing people from getting close to you by treating them like strangers. You might be surprised to find that you are setting the very tone you are unhappy with. Try not to think, "Is it okay that I ask about this?" or "Am I going too far?" That's not what close friends do. You'll be surprised at how people will open up and the subsequent effect on how they receive you. This might mean you're acting outside your comfort zone from time to time, but that's why you're reading this book in the first place. If it was so easy, everyone would be doing it, and you're seeking a way to improve your behaviors to achieve the outcome you want. Ideally, we should be true to ourselves and keep it honest at all times. Unfortunately, we live in an imperfect world. Oftentimes, you have to compromise to achieve your desired results. In this case, all you're doing is acting like your friends and communicating in a way that allows them to open up to you. That's not manipulation or misrepresentation. You're just skipping past small talk and diving into the interesting parts of people's lives. This has been The Science of Likability: 60 Evidence-Based Methods to Radiate Charisma, Make a Powerful Impression, Win Friends, and Trigger Attraction. Written by Patrick King, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2019 by Patrick King. Production copyright by Patrick King.